She married the billionaire for a deal, but his secret that night changed everything. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We have noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It is quick, free, and it allows us to keep bringing you great stories. Your support means everything. Let us keep this channel growing together. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let us get back to our main character. On the night they signed the rules, he broke the only one that mattered. Rain poured over Manhattan like a curtain of silver. Inside a quiet rooftop lounge, the world seemed to hold its breath. A woman sat across from a man whose name carried more weight than most corporations combined. Her name was Clara Wynn, a florist turned architectural designer whose small studio was one payment away from collapse. The man before her, Ethan Ward, was the elusive billionaire of Ward Industries, the kind of man who could buy silence with a signature and ruin an empire with a smile. He slid a sleek black folder across the marble table. The sound of paper against glass sliced through the hum of rain. "Marry me," he said calmly. "Think of it as a business agreement." Clara's throat tightened. "You do not even know me." "I know enough," Ethan replied, his tone unreadable. "You need the money. I need a wife. It is temporary. 6 months. No emotions. No expectations." The city lights shimmered behind him, reflected in the dark windows like constellations. For a second, Clara saw not a man, but a wall impenetrable, flawless, and lonely. "What happens when the 6 months are over?" she asked quietly. He leaned back, eyes steady on hers. "Then we end the contract. You keep your freedom. I keep my inheritance." Silence, the kind that presses against your ribs and steals your breath. Clara looked down at the pen in her hand. The rain outside blurred the skyline, and her reflection in the window looked like someone she no longer recognized. Her mother's flower shop had already been served its final notice. The debt collectors had stopped calling only because they knew there was nothing left to take. "Why me?" she whispered. Ethan's gaze softened for the briefest moment. "Because you do not want to be rescued. You just want a chance." The line hit harder than she expected. She picked up the pen. Her hand trembled as she signed her name Clara Wynn, ink against paper, one heartbeat away from rewriting her life. He reached across the table, his cufflinks catching the dim light, and turned the final page for his signature. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "You are now Mrs. Ward, on paper." Outside, thunder rolled across the Hudson River, deep and distant, like a warning neither of them cared to hear. Clara exhaled shakily, her fingers tracing the edge of the contract. This was supposed to be simple, a deal to save a dream, not a heart. But when Ethan stood and held out his hand, something in the air shifted. Not romance, not warmth, something else, an echo of what it feels like when two broken people unknowingly step onto the same bridge, halfway between survival and surrender. And though she did not know it yet, the man who had just become her husband carried a secret one that would soon make this contract the most dangerous promise she had ever signed. Rain still hung over the city like a bruise in the sky. The next morning, Clara Wynn woke in a penthouse that looked more like a museum than a home. The scent of polished marble and expensive silence filled the air. It was the first day of her new life as Mrs. Ward on paper. Every step echoed. The hallway stretched too long, too perfect, with portraits of strangers who shared Ethan's last name but not his warmth. A housekeeper nodded stiffly, offering coffee that tasted of luxury and distance. Clara thanked her softly and gazed out the floor-to-ceiling window. Below, the city pulsed with life she could no longer touch. When Ethan appeared, he was already dressed for the day, charcoal suit, silver tie, the calm of a man who planned every second. "We leave in 20 minutes, he said simply. "Where are we going?" "To meet the legal team. The contract must be notarized. After that, there will be fittings, photographs, and a few public appearances." Clara nodded, clutching the warm cup between her hands. "Do I need to act like a wife already?" He paused, studying her face. "No, just act like someone who has something to lose." The elevator ride down was silent, except for the low hum of the machinery. Clara kept her eyes on the digital numbers blinking floor by floor. Ethan scrolled through his phone, unreadable. At the firm, the air smelled of paper and power. A lawyer slid a stack of documents across the table. Ethan signed first, his pen gliding effortlessly. When it was her turn, Clara hesitated, then pressed her signature below his. The ink barely dried when the lawyer smiled. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Ward." It sounded official now, irreversible. Back in the car, Clara looked at him. "You really do not waste time." "I do not believe in wasting anything," Ethan replied, eyes still on the skyline. For a long moment, she just watched him. There was something distant about the way he existed, like he was made of glass, transparent, beautiful, but untouchable. That evening, Clara's mother called from the hospital. The surgery had been approved, the money had already been transferred. Clara froze. "I have not even sent the request yet," she whispered. "I handled it," Ethan said from across the room without looking up from his laptop. "Why?" He glanced up briefly. "Because that was part of the deal, was it not? You save your family." "I save my reputation." She wanted to thank him, but the words felt small compared to the silence between them. Later that night, Clara stood on the balcony. The wind tangled her hair, and below her, New York shimmered an ocean of lights and noise she no longer belonged to. Behind her, Ethan's voice was calm, almost quiet. "Do you regret it?" She turned. "Would it matter if I did?" He did not answer. He only walked closer, stopping a few feet away. The city lights reflected in his eyes like fire trapped in glass. "Regret is expensive," he said finally, "and I never pay for something twice." Then he walked back inside, leaving her alone with the hum of the city and a strange ache in her chest. Clara looked down at her hand. The wedding band glinted under the night sky, too heavy for something that was supposed to mean nothing. She whispered to herself, "It is just business." But, even as she said it, she knew that business deals did not make her heart race. This way. Inside, the clock ticked softly. The papers on the table fluttered with the wind coming through the open balcony door, their signatures side by side, already binding them in ways neither could yet see. And somewhere behind Ethan's quiet composure, behind the calm precision of a man who built his life on control, something had already begun to shift. 3 days after the signatures dried, the first clause of the contract began. Clara Wynn was to attend a press conference beside Ethan Ward, presenting the image of a newlywed couple united by fate rather than finance. Her stylist, a sharp woman named Marla, pinned the final strand of Clara's hair and said, "Smile with your eyes, not your mouth. Americans love sincerity, even when it is staged." Clara practiced in the mirror. She looked elegant, poised, and entirely unlike herself. The pale silk dress fit perfectly, but she felt like an actress trapped in someone else's role. When Ethan entered the suite, his gaze swept over her once polite, assessing, not unkind. "You will do fine," he said. She folded her hands. "Do you ever get nervous?" He almost smiled. "I stopped believing in nerves the day I started signing billion-dollar checks." The flash of cameras met them as they stepped onto the marble staircase of the Ward headquarters. The crowd clapped politely, reporters calling questions. "Mr. Ward, how did you meet your wife?" Ethan's voice was calm. "At a charity gala, she spilled coffee on my tie. I decided I preferred her honesty to anyone else's perfection." It was a lie, but it sounded true. Clara forced a smile, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Another reporter shouted, "Mrs. Ward, what made you fall in love with him?" The world slowed. For a second, her throat went dry. Then she said softly, "Because he never pretends to be more than he is." Ethan's head turned slightly toward her, eyes narrowing with quiet surprise. The cameras flashed again, capturing a moment that looked real enough to sell on every magazine cover. After the event, in the limousine, silence filled the space between them. Ethan finally said, "That answer was not in the script." Clara turned her head to the window. "Neither was spilling coffee on your tie." He let out a small breath that almost sounded like a laugh. For the first time, she heard something human in it. Back at the penthouse, Ethan received a call from his attorney. Clara heard fragments of the conversation: inheritance, board meeting, deadlines. The deal was working exactly as he planned. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt invisible. Later that evening, she found herself in the private library, surrounded by shelves lined with leather-bound books no one seemed to touch. Her fingers brushed across the spines until one book fell open on its own, a journal, not a novel. Inside, neat handwriting filled the pages with fragments of thoughts, business, strategies, and one quiet line that stopped her heart. "Love is the only contract I could never keep." She stood frozen, the words sinking deep. Before she could close the book, Ethan appeared at the doorway. His expression shifted from curiosity to caution. "You were not supposed to read that." "I was not trying to," she said softly. It just opened. He walked over, took the journal gently, and placed it back on the shelf. "Some things are meant to stay closed, Clara. Even when they are already written." His jaw tightened, especially then. The silence between them carried something heavier than anger, something that hummed just beneath the surface. That night, as she lay awake in the guest bedroom, she thought of the clause she had signed: no emotions, no expectations. The words had felt safe on paper, but in practice, they were already impossible. Outside, the city lights flickered against the rain-soaked glass, and from down the hall she heard Ethan's faint footsteps pacing, stopping, and pacing again. For the first time, she wondered if the man she married to save her future was also running from his own past. And as the thunder rolled over Manhattan once more, Clara realized the rules of their contract were already beginning to crack. By the end of the first month, the world had learned to adore Clara Wynn Ward, the elegant new wife of New York's most private billionaire. The press called her the calm among the storm, while business outlets praised Ethan's sudden shift from ruthless to respectable. But inside the penthouse, silence had returned. The only sound each morning was the rustle of the newspaper and the faint tap of Ethan's pen against the rim of his coffee cup. Clara had grown used to it, the rhythm of someone who measured time by results, not moments. Sometimes, she wondered what he would be like if he ever stopped calculating. One evening, Marla came to deliver another stack of invitations. "He wants you at all of them," she said. "Investors love the idea of a grounded wife." Clara smiled faintly. "So, I am branding now." "Exactly," Marla replied. "You are his calm image." That night, Ethan walked in as Clara was arranging flowers in a crystal vase. The petals glowed soft pink beneath the chandelier. He stopped, watching her hands move gently among the stems. "You still do that," he said quietly. "Do what?" "Treat everything like it deserves to be saved." She looked up at him. "And you treat everything like it needs to be controlled." A faint smirk tugged at his mouth, then faded. "Control is safer than chaos." "But control does not mean peace," she said. He looked away, pretending to check his phone, but the words stayed in the air between them. 2 nights later, they attended a charity dinner at the Waldorf. Ethan guided her through the crowded ballroom with a practiced hand at her back. Flashbulbs burst like small storms. When a journalist asked if their marriage had changed him, Ethan answered smoothly, "It reminded me that sometimes strength looks like gentleness." Clara turned to look at him, startled. The sincerity in his tone was not rehearsed. It was the first time he had said something that sounded unscripted. During dinner, the board chairman toasted them for bringing humanity back to the Ward legacy. Ethan's glass paused midair. His jaw tightened slightly, but he smiled for the cameras. Later, when the orchestra softened and the guests began to dance, Ethan offered her his hand. "One dance. It will keep the rumors quiet." She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. His touch was steady, cool at first, then warmer as the music wrapped around them. For a man who lived by structure, his steps were unexpectedly graceful. He led, she followed, and for a fleeting moment the contract faded into something almost real. As the song ended, applause rose. Around them. Ethan leaned closer, his breath brushing her ear. "You did well tonight." "So did you," she whispered. Almost believable. His smile barely showed, but his eyes did something rare. They softened. Back in the car, the silence between them felt different, charged instead of cold. When the city lights flickered through the tinted glass, she caught her reflection beside his and thought, "We look like two people who actually belong to each other." When they arrived home, Ethan walked ahead. She lingered near the doorway, noticing the framed photographs on the console table, his parents, a younger version of him standing beside a woman she did not recognize. The woman's face was kind, her smile genuine. Who is she? Clara asked. Ethan froze for a heartbeat. No one important, he said quietly, and turned away. But the flicker in his voice told her otherwise. As he disappeared down the hall, Clara stared at the photograph again, her pulse quickening. The woman's eyes looked hauntingly familiar, and something deep inside her whispered that this was not just a picture, it was a secret, waiting to be found. And somewhere in the darkness of that penthouse, the truth that Ethan had buried years ago had just begun to stir. The next morning, Clara Wynn Ward could not shake the image of that photograph, the unknown woman, beside a younger Ethan Ward. Her smile lingered in Clara's mind like a shadow. Ethan left early for a board meeting, the sound of the elevator doors closing echoing through the empty penthouse. Clara made coffee but barely touched it. The housekeeper noticed her distraction and said gently, "That picture, ma'am, it has not been moved in years." Clara looked up. "Do you know who she is?" The housekeeper hesitated, then shook her head. "It is not my place to say." That phrase, "not my place," followed Clara the entire morning. By noon, she was due at the Ward Foundation office. A public relations obligation meant to show her charitable side. A row of cameras waited as she cut ribbons and posed with donors. It all felt like theater. But when she looked at the logo of the foundation, two intertwined initials inside a gold circle, she saw the same design engraved on the photo frame from Ethan's console table. That was no coincidence. When she returned home, Ethan was already there, his jacket off, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He looked exhausted, standing near the same table as if he knew she had noticed. "You have questions," he said before she could speak. "I do," Clara answered, "but I am not sure you will answer them." He leaned against the edge of the table, studying her. "What did you see?" "The woman in the picture," she said carefully. "She is connected to your foundation, is she not?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "Her name was Elise. She started the foundation with me before the company became what it is today." "Was she your wife?" His gaze dropped to the floor. "She was my fiancée." Clara's breath caught. The word felt heavy, real. "She died in a car accident 8 years ago," he continued quietly. "The night before we were supposed to sign our marriage license." The room went still. "I was the one driving," Ethan said. "We were fighting about the foundation, about whether to sell part of it to investors. I lost control of the car." Clara's hand covered her mouth. "You blamed yourself. I built everything after that night because I did not know what else to do," he said. "Every deal, every acquisition, every signature was a way to stay busy enough to forget." For a moment, she saw the man behind the empire, not the billionaire, not the strategist, but a human being haunted by one irreversible mistake. Clara stepped closer, her voice soft. "You cannot fix the past by punishing yourself." Ethan's jaw tightened. "The past is the only thing that never lies." "Neither does pain," she replied. "But you do not have to live inside it." Their eyes met, and for the first time, Ethan did not look away. Later that evening, as they prepared for another gala, Clara noticed something had changed. Ethan was quieter, less polished. When the reporters asked about his late fiancée, he did not deflect. "Instead," he said, "every life leaves a mark. The best we can do is build something worthy of it." The crowd applauded. Clara watched him speak and saw not a man hiding behind control, but one finally letting go. On the drive home, he turned to her. "I did not mean for you to find out that way. I am not sorry I did," she said. "You keep so many walls up, Ethan. Someone needed to see behind them." He was silent for a long time before whispering, "You should not care that much." This was supposed to be a deal. She looked out the window, her reflection framed by city lights. Maybe the deal stopped being about money the moment you stopped pretending. When the car pulled into the garage, Ethan opened the door for her, something he had never done before. Their hands brushed, a quiet gesture that said more than either could admit. Upstairs, as thunder rumbled beyond the glass, Clara stood alone for a long moment, realizing that the man she had agreed to marry for survival was slowly becoming the one she could not imagine losing. And deep down, Ethan knew that the secret he had revealed that night had changed more than his past, it had rewritten their future. The days following Ethan's confession changed something unspoken between them. Clara Wynn Ward noticed it first in the quiet details, the way he paused before speaking, the way his tone softened when he said her name. It was as if he had exhaled after years of holding his breath. But secrets, even when shared, do not dissolve overnight. They linger like ghosts, waiting for the next storm. The next board gala arrived sooner than either of them wanted. It was held at the Metropolitan Hall, all glass and chandeliers, the kind of place where every smile carried a price tag. Clara stood beside Ethan as the cameras flashed once again. Their choreographed partnership had become second nature, but tonight felt different. The air between them hummed with something alive. When the speeches began, Ethan handed her the microphone. "Say something," he murmured. "They already believe in me. They need to believe in you." Clara froze for a second. This was not in the script. Yet when she stepped forward, the words came naturally. "Partnerships are not built on perfection," she said softly, scanning the crowd. "They are built on what people choose to do after they break." The room went quiet. Even the orchestra paused. Then came the applause, slow at first, then thunderous. Ethan's eyes never left her. Pride flickered there, but something warmer hid beneath it. Later, on the balcony overlooking the city, he joined her with 2 glasses of champagne. "You surprised me," he said. "Why? Because I spoke without asking permission?" "Because you spoke the truth," he replied. "And you made them feel something I could not." Clara smiled faintly. "That is because you keep your feelings locked away." He looked at her for a long time, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. "Maybe I am finally learning how to open the door." The music drifted through the open doors behind them. A soft breeze swept across the balcony, brushing Clara's hair against his shoulder. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. "Do you ever think about starting over?" she asked quietly. "Every day," he admitted. "But I never thought I would want to start over with someone." The words hung between them, delicate and dangerous. Then his phone vibrated, shattering the moment. He answered briefly, his expression darkening as he listened. When he ended the call, the warmth in his eyes had turned to steel. "What happened?" Clara asked. "There is an internal leak," he said flatly. "Someone at the company just exposed the marriage contract to the media." Clara's stomach dropped. "The contract? Ethan, it means they will think you married me for money, and I used you for headlines." The weight of it hit her all at once, the betrayal, the humiliation waiting to erupt online. "Who would do this?" she whispered. He shook his head. "I will find out, but you need to stay home until I fix it." "Stay home?" Clara repeated. "Ethan, they are going to tear me apart. I cannot just hide." His voice hardened. "This is business, Clara. Let me handle it." Her heart stung at the word business. After everything, after the honesty they had begun to share, he was retreating behind walls again. She stepped back, her voice trembling but steady. "You keep saying this is business, but it stopped being that a long time ago. If you cannot see that, maybe you are not trying." He opened his mouth to answer, but she turned and walked away before he could speak. The flashbulbs from inside the ballroom bled into the night air like lightning. For the first time, Ethan Ward, the man who controlled everything, had no idea how to control this. And for the first time, Clara wondered if she had fallen for a man who was still at war with his own heart. The city below glittered, unaware that their perfect marriage had just cracked open for the world to see. The deepest secrets are about to change everything. Subscribe now to catch the dramatic twist that is coming in the next chapter. The headlines hit the next morning. The billionaire's contract bride. Ward's marriage was a business deal. Every outlet carried the same story, Clara's photo beside Ethan's. The contract mentioned in cruel detail. Within hours, the story spread across every news feed. Clara sat alone at the kitchen counter, her phone buzzing endlessly. Comments, messages, and calls blurred together into noise. She turned the device face down, her hands trembling. When Ethan entered, his tie undone and expression tight, she looked up at him. "They know everything," she said quietly. "I am handling it," he replied. "How?" "By hiding the truth again." Ethan stopped, his jaw rigid. "The truth is complicated." "No," Clara said, standing. "It is simple. You made a deal. I signed it. But now they think I sold myself, and you will not even defend me." "I am protecting you," he said sharply. "By silencing me?" Her voice cracked. "Do you know how humiliating this is?" Ethan's control faltered for the first time. "You think I do not know humiliation? I built an empire from the ruins of one mistake, And now everything I touch turns into another headline. Clara took a slow breath, her anger turning to something colder. Maybe the problem is not what they write. Maybe it is that you keep living like you deserve to be punished. He looked at her, and for a heartbeat, there was no defense left in his eyes, only exhaustion. That evening, Ethan faced a board meeting filled with cameras and shareholders demanding answers. Clara watched the live broadcast from home. He stood at the podium, the picture of control, but she saw through it. His voice was calm, practiced, detached. Not once did he mention her name. When the broadcast ended, Clara turned off the television. The contract, the press, the performances, it all felt like an elaborate cage. She walked to their study, pulled open a drawer, and found the original copy of their marriage contract. The paper was thick, the signatures crisp. Under the lamp's warm light, she read each clause again. No emotions, no expectations. Her eyes lingered on those words before she folded the paper neatly and placed it back in the envelope. When Ethan returned late that night, she was waiting by the doorway. "You once told me control was safer than chaos," she said softly. "But sometimes chaos is the only thing that makes us human." He froze, realizing what she meant. "I am leaving for a while," Clara continued. "Not because I regret the deal, but because I finally understand it is not love, if only one of us is willing to fight for it." She walked past him, out into the rain-soaked night, leaving the door open behind her. Ethan stood still, the envelope on the table catching the wind, the contract shifting just enough to expose her signature faded now, like something that had once mattered and was finally letting go. For weeks after Clara Wynn Ward left, the penthouse stood silent, stripped of everything that had made it feel alive. The vase of pink lilies she had arranged turned brittle, petals falling one by one across the marble floor. Ethan Ward stopped attending events. The board handled his appearances, and his name faded from the headlines almost as quickly as it had burned through them. He told himself this was control, that peace could be found in distance, but the quiet became unbearable. He read the contract over and over again, tracing her signature with his thumb. No emotions, no expectations. The words that once protected him now felt like a curse. One evening, he drove without thinking, past the skyscrapers and into the older part of the city. He stopped in front of a small flower shop with a faded sign that read, "Wynn Blooms." The bell above the door chimed as he stepped inside. The air smelled of earth and jasmine. Behind the counter stood Clara, her hands covered in petals and color. She froze when she saw him. "You found me. I was not sure if I should," Ethan said quietly. "Then why are you here?" He hesitated, glancing around the shop. "Because this is where you were before I turned everything into a transaction. And I wanted to remember what it looked like when something was real." Clara looked down at her hands, then at the small arrangement she had been working on, a single white daisy at the center of pale wildflowers. "You always had a way of saying too little and meaning too much." He stepped closer. "I do not want to mean too little anymore." Silence stretched between them, soft and fragile. "I watched the board meeting," Clara said. "You never mentioned me. Not once." "I was trying to protect you," he replied. "You were trying to protect yourself," she corrected gently. "You cannot rewrite what the world thinks of us, Ethan. But you can choose who you want to be when no one is watching." Ethan looked at her, the weight of every lie and silence pressing against him. "Then, let me choose now. I cannot undo what I did, but I can start over if you let me." Clara met his eyes, and for a moment she saw the man from that first night, the one who had offered her a dipper, deal instead of love, and now stood asking for forgiveness instead of control. She handed him the bouquet. "Then start here. One flower, one truth at a time." Ethan took it, his hand brushing hers. "Is that another contract?" She smiled softly. "No, this time it is a promise." Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights reflected through the shop window, shimmering against the petals in his hand. For the first time, Ethan Ward did not feel like a man signing a deal. He felt like a man finally learning how to keep one. 6 months later, the world had moved on from the scandal, but Ethan Ward and Clara Wynn Ward had not returned to the stage of headlines. They had quietly disappeared from the circles that once dictated their lives. What remained was not noise, but something stronger: choice. The old flower shop on the corner of 10th Avenue had become something new. Its sign still read Wynn Blooms, but beneath it, a smaller one glimmered softly under the evening light. In partnership with the Ward Foundation. Inside, volunteers worked side by side, arranging flowers that were delivered to hospitals, shelters, and nursing homes across the city. At the counter, Clara tied the final ribbon around a bouquet of daisies and wild lilies, the same kind Ethan had brought her every week since the day he found her again. She heard the familiar click of the front door and looked up. Ethan stepped inside, carrying a cardboard box filled with new supplies. His suit jacket was replaced by rolled-up sleeves and a loosened tie. He looked at peace in a way she had never seen before. "How are we doing today, Mrs. Ward?" he asked, setting the box down. She smiled. "Better than yesterday. That is progress." He looked around the shop, taking in the laughter of the volunteers and the faint scent of lavender drifting through the air. "You turned this place into something alive again." "We turned it into something honest," she corrected. Ethan nodded, pulling something small from his pocket, a folded piece of paper, yellowed with time. "Do you recognize this?" Clara's eyes widened. "The contract." He unfolded it, revealing their signatures, still faintly visible. "I kept it as a reminder of what love is not." Then he reached for a lighter, flicked it open, and held the paper above the flame. For a moment, it glowed gold before curling into ash. He set it gently in a glass dish, until only smoke remained. Clara watched quietly. "So what are the rules now?" Ethan smiled. "Only one. Love is binding, with no expiration date." She laughed softly, brushing a speck of ash from his sleeve. "That sounds like the first promise you have ever made without a lawyer." "Then I suppose it is the first one that matters," he said. Outside, the city hummed, alive and unhurried. The lights of Manhattan shimmered against the glass, and inside the little shop, the two of them stood hand in hand. No contracts, no pretenses. Only two people who had finally learned that real love begins where deals end. The bell above the door chimed again as new visitors entered, bringing the night with them. Clara turned to greet them, her voice warm, steady, and free. And for the first time since that cold night in the rooftop lounge, Ethan Ward no longer felt like a man haunted by control. He felt human, whole, and finally home. Thank you for joining us for this cinematic adventure. If you want more untold stories of billionaire love and redemption, please subscribe and choose your next true heart journey on your screen now.